desired input. Everywhere it matters. Somewhere in the land of unknowing, there is a pattern beyond this. The various contents of one accumulated life begin to look like congested matter, returning eventually as they do to mere refuse. Even recognizing this, there is an inclination to never yield one's hoard. The matter occupies a space which could be silent and free. It is not just the thought one thinks, but all the endless permutations that come with it. One can dip in and out of sufficient insight is gleaned and polished at the correct time. Discernment grants this. But one can just as easily refuse to recognize the true properties of this state. When compulsive collecting and accumulation continues, it is as though one is burying themselves, submerging into depths, lauding what one has rather than ever knowing why. Sit, listen, do not judge or praise. Don't think yourself worthy or unworthy. Do not be idle or engage in pointless work. There are few materials you actually need. Resisting the need to overwhelm your senses from yourself, you will see clearly what seems to trouble you. Much of it will seem real, but very little is. Be with the grievances patiently until powerless they fade away to bare whispers and eventual silence. Thanks. Luke's my own paid manager, as of 5 minutes ago. Alright, this is called Jack's Detail. The wise ones, the true ones, the good ones, the loyal ones, the bright ones, the kind ones. They carry the weight for all of us, ever with the silent support of compassion-full hearts. Empathy on an elementary level is the outward recognition of someone's pain. But empathy is not to know the pain, to feel the pain of another. This is what compassion is. To be filled with another's joy, to be filled with another's disappointment, to feel their triumph, to feel their shame, to neither reject it nor shape it to a manner of one's liking, but to be with it until its natural passing. Many who do this burn brightly but for a short time, immolating their essence in offerings so that others might be free. Others burn but slow and steady so that their influence is subtle, slow, incremental, but laying the foundation of liberation itself. The cruel, the wicked, as ever, know not what they do. Caught in contorted twists of ugly, distorted reflection, they are engrossed for eons until finally collapsing the only way is up. All of us are born, thrown into different ages, beliefs, genders, binaries, isms, and so on. There is the game of no game. There is the game of game. There is the game of big, small, winning, losing. There is the game of knowing all is true and all is false. Some directives are inevitable, inexorable. To be born is to resist or to submit, to fail, to win, to become a god, to spend a lifetime draining and expending your last drop of merit until there is no alternative but to begin again, with only the innate instinct of interminable reoccurrences to sustain you. There are corners seen, corners unseen, contexts understood and misunderstood, highways and byways, side quests bigger than the quest itself. The list is nowhere near exhaustive. The pool from which to draw insight, nigh omnipotent. I know from where I sit, even with the vast current of knowledge and lore preceding me, I remain but one node, one infinitesimal reference point. For all my affectations, highfalutin claims, how many yuga cycles must be mastered before I even have an ion of real understanding? These words, these formations, but a shout in the dark, but a message to a future that may or may not still exist. True, there may have been previous iterations, an offshoot of a long since forgotten past, where I, unknowing, might have indulged, engaged in earnest in some endeavour unaffected, in good faith, honest and true. But this is not that iteration. Long ago I embarked on a crazy journey, went off the beaten track, blew my conceptions apart, and from shattered constructs delved into the possibilities of something different, of something radically new. There were reckonings, vast abysms, chasms of despair, dark nights, alienations, prodigal sons. There is no radical transformation without sacrifice. There is no transformation, no matter how seemingly trivial, without sacrifice. To be where you are now requires a sacrifice of what one could be, of what one could have been. Choose wisely. Be good to one another. See with your eyes open. Be attentive in your listening. Don't be held, locked in fear, or by shame, or whatever arbitrary bag of karma you find yourself born into. Listen, don't listen. See, don't see. The childhood of this lifetime is but a footnote. No matter what story you tell yourself is true, you will return if something is left unfinished. Let yourself be shaped, but shape everything around you. Be at play, be at peace, be passionate, be horny, be glum, be loved, be lonely. There is no wasted moment. Whoever you are, there you be. All right, considerations of capital. Wailing tinnitus, the whining song of industry. Dissonant alerts, undead in their cacophony. Percentages of unassuming simians perfectly placed as cogs, logging in and out, preferring square peg philosophy. Lo and behold, circular folk would rather a orbital lobotomy than the wearing down of one's autonomy by the edicts of neoliberal ideology. Categorizations rule all we see, all we touch, feel, smell, and think. Not forgiving a moment's inattention, not even for a wink. Am I high functioning or am I low? Am I ready for work? But am I supported? Work isn't liberty if it's devoid of purpose. The state should value all its citizens and should factor those whose needs are different. Underpinning their lackluster modes at assimilating us is the notion that we desire assimilation. There are substantially divergent individuals who in good faith they clamber inside the hamster wheel designed to encompass them. As good little workers, they never complain until unexpectedly and with not a moment's notice, with neither a peep or a shout, they'll succumb to burnout, devoting all sick hours they can muster to recovering their scarcely balanced equilibrium. If we are able, we're not disabled. If we are not disabled, we are able. Are we capable? How disabled are we? On a scale of 1 to 3. What meager support that's provided will not be increased, but subtracted. All disabled people should be encouraged to work in the framework that's provided. What bureaucrat, pray tell, will inflict me the hell of hurling me into this swirling mess? The arbiter of my distress, the lifetime spent measuring my suitability for work was the only consideration. My consistent failures at normalization add to the list of negative internalizations, environments awash with hellish overstimulation, work placements and demands evaluated on how effectively I could carry out a command. A failure to do so is assumed to be a deficit inherent to me and not a systematic failing of society. Supports on this basis measure us at our worst and not at our best. Any demonstration of ability is seen as proof that they can work and need no help. They should work and need no help. And so we have to prove that we are sometimes at our worst and that we do need help, but are also independent and at some things excelling. Like there are neat categories of severity, and the trick is arguing where we fall in a metric concocted by the bureaucrats of whom we must beg for the mercy, mercy, mercy. Thank you. That's about the intersection of autistic people who have an 85% unemployment rate. So yeah, society, let's get working on that. Right, so I'm going to do something I don't usually do. This is kind of a bit longer form. It's more of a story format. So we'll see how it goes. It's quite zany and quite psychedelic. So here we go. Dharma field. Guess what it's about? Guess what it's about? Many were the minutes, experienced as years in fields. Having succumbed to the entreaties, I had a bit of the fruit of the tree of life. Clambering from the form of the body, I ascended through all varying conflagrations of matter, energy, becoming more energy and more spirit, as the moment year passed in a field that shall forever for now remain nameless. I looked up, and around laying in some open space between a tree and a circus tent, I found myself perfectly incapable of moving a solitary inch. Some hippie-adorned lady hovered over me and asked me straightforwardly, "You're going to be here for a while." "Yeah," I murmured. At that point, amazed, my mouth was still working, what with the light beams punctuating at various intervals into the dark night sky of Arlen's garden. "No worries," she murmured with what I could detect was a tone of inevitable resignation. "Everybody! Phil here is going nowhere for the next few hours. Will you look after him?" "Yes," came a holler from folk unseen, clearly versed in these matters by the sound of it. My brain all a-whirl, I found my mind's eye rise up out of my body, a panopticon peering into all space and time, and staring at some bushy-headed fella in a suit jacket mumbling to himself. That's me, by the way. "You poor feckin' Egypt," it intoned with an utterly incorporeal voice that sounded suspiciously like me. "How did you get here?" With not a moment to spare, a giant multicolored ball engulfed the whole world, waving and weaving and warping its way out of existence. All gradients and shades and tones of color I didn't know could exist. Flashes of memory simultaneously, memory and experience all at once in some subliminal space outside the distinct references. A story arises. I'm inside the circus tent. Hundreds of people, rough, ready, and seriously ready to party. Dionysian vigor as a collective mass of people, leaping, cavorting, hollering, and yelping like mad yokes. I glance on stage, and what do I spy but my friends DJing, bringing the tent down. Seized with the spirit of daring do, I resolve to make my way onto the stage. Fence and security do be damned. I stood back and observed, looking for any opening that might present itself. The route the security lad was taking was repetitive as hell and very predictable. In the back of my head, I was reminded of the swinging axe in Tomb Raider. I was not going to be axed! As he circled away from the fence, I seized my moment. Detecting a gap, I saw a point people were leaving in and out of. He looked away and I dashed like a sprinter going for gold. I arrived at my destination, pivoted the fence, and quickly closed it behind me. I was backstage! Without a moment's hesitation, my friends spotted me and summoned me on stage. I ambled on stage, the lines between real and imagined and smudged to within an inch of whatever construct I had previously assumed was reality. There was an enormous cheer from the audience. I spied about 40 of my friends screaming like lunatics, "Phil!" Standing in the sea of people that was basically a bacchanal at this point was one dumbfounded security guard, whose head was about as purple as a grape. He sprayed flecks of scarcely contained saliva. Even amidst the din, I was simultaneously able to hear him speak as though there was no surrounding ambience at all. "You! Get the fuck off the stage!" My mates before me looked at him squarely and simply said, "He's grand." The DJ gods had spoken. Suddenly the panopticon descends and lands in the center of my skull, going from gargantuan to non-existent in the time it says, "What the actual fool?" "You alright, buddy?" I hear someone ask. Suddenly having a body again, I sit up, my back against the tree, some 20-something-year-old woman and her boyfriend expressing concern over my well-being. Yeah, I replied, secretly jubilant at having acquired the capacity of speech for what felt like the umpteenth time in this incarnation. How could I explain to them that I had been staring cat-eyed into the floating conventional body of the main man Bhagavan Buddha, but my would-be cosmic babysitter, for God knows how many minutes/years. They asked me could they hang out, and I assented with the glee of a schoolyard loner on his first day at junior infants. We hung out for what must have been hours. Bothered by the midges biting them, I informed them that we were in their field and it was the least we could do, a fact which I'm sure they readily appreciated. They asked me what I was doing in these neck of the woods, and I informed them I was a poet. Could you do a poem for us? Like an Irish Lazarus, I arose somehow, spontaneously recalling that I had a body. I could use these things in the corporeal realm. Sure thing, I said with as much emphasis as I could muster. Standing before them, I said, Here is a piece by the Persian mystic poet Jalaluddin Balkhi, Rumi for short. It's called Community of the Spirit. There is a community of the Spirit. Join in it and feel the delight of walking in the noisy street and being the noise. By the end of the piece, the couple were crying, with big smiles on their faces. We embraced, forming a mini dome with our arms, shielding from the dim of our surrounds. We hovered together for a moment, and when the moment was right, decoupled our persons, acknowledging each other with a knowing nod. No need for words, we parted, floating off like pollen grains carried on a spectral wind. Making my way back to the tent I probably didn't have, I awoke the next morning, sleeping in someone's porch, coming back to reality but still basically wary of it. Zip! The front porch gave away and I, fearful like a rabbit, jumped up a fright. It was a friend. My heart was hammering. I knew I was okay, but I was still fucking terrified. There, Phil. You'll be alright. Would you like an orange? He placed it in my hands, and I stared at this blazing gem before me like it was a holy sacrament to be revered and protected with the most devout enthusiasm. I spoke to him and said, I have an orange from the outside world. I can live in the outside world now. He replied, You do that, Phil. Suddenly, all fear gone, I bounded down a hill, a sea of tents marking the path as I descended. I brandished it triumphantly and proclaimed, like the Sermon on the Mount, I have an orange! A murmur bubbled up, and from the crowd someone yelled, Everybody look! Phil has an orange! I brandished it aloft, like I won the motherfucking Olympics of life. I tore the skin off and devoured the orange with ecstatic veracity. The juices electrified every inch of my being, and everyone present cheered rapturously, losing their collective minds. For it seemed like the umpteenth time in this incarnation, I could walk and talk again. Thank you very much.
That's about 8 years of knocking stocking experiences compressed into one. I know it happened over many different years, but it all basically seems like the same period of time. Alright, so
10-minute call,
a little
Phil.
bit.
Okay.
Phil.
Let's do 10 minutes. Perfect. Okay. I'll do that. Cool. I need to label my book. Myriad. Throughout all the myriad possibilities, there is this line of reasoning. Reason being the safety net we grant ourselves. I'm thinking it must be me, but when I consider the relationship between my thoughts and action, it is nowhere to be found. Arriving precisely when I am not prepared or paying attention. Indeed, it is a guest which comes and goes. In effect, I am a glorified cataloguer of events. I say, I am a storyteller. But we are all no more or less than any other. There is always a teller and ever a listener, one who speaks and one who is silent. Perhaps you are the only one who speaks or the only one who listens. Maybe you are the only audience you need. More will follow if you hear, one in constant moment passing into another, each and every instance unborn and undying. There is no supreme sign by which to recognize, save for a pause, a span of time unbroken. I try to make each line as concise as possible. There are days when all I wish is to follow a thread to its endless end. Intuitively, it always feels like it's around the corner. It's safe to say I progress in life, in writing the way many do in life. That is to say that at some point further on, my destiny will be realized. Try as I might, life has never looked that way to me. Too often I find myself trying to replicate some sort of distant narrative that I imagine others to be living. In truth, I know nothing about them or their lives. I cannot hold and compare their experiences to mine and say, this is good, this is bad. There is no supreme judgment. I'm so sick and tired of writing self-admonishing monologues. Trying to pin others or myself down in judgment has never worked. Autistic, atypical, Asperger's, neurodivergent. I'd be lying if I told you these things have not given me comfort. How lucky is anyone in life not to feel they have to say, I am this, may I be counted. You are who you are. It's not about being acceptable, it's about acceptance. Offsetting and delaying your own worth is pointless in the end. Simply living without affectation or expecting others to give you what you do not give to yourself. Respect. When I try to plan, something else happens. As for writing, as for life, it's the doing that gets done. Thou art that. Thank you. Oh my god. It's like a fucking oven. Apart from the fact it's an actual fucking oven in here. Over to Sweeney's. This is over to Sweeney's. I presume this is the last 5 episodes. A unique island in a sea of madnesses offered refuge for the man, and found in their number they were now alone no longer, for a time were comforted. They may have been no greater or weaker upon entering or leaving for that matter, but for a time didn't consider what shape or manner their facades were composed. Jesus Christ, I'm sweating my balls off. Singular mass, oceanic insanity, provided safe haven for fools. Digits coalesced and obtained, loneliness interrupted. Unassailed by fear, nothing was tangibly different upon arrival. Temporality was not aware of any distinctions it had. Playing squash with words, for want of a better verb. A smell has been collecting in the rear of the pub. Some have drank tea for 2 hours, usually the same long cooled cup. Outcomes and welcomes are usually worn out by the end of the night. The legless somehow walk as though newly arisen. It seems like the talk has diminished to naught, with naught but the holdout of a drunk and or stoned mumbler. Random daft, 3 floors split. A trigram of yangs, abundant and creative, ends in the early morning, cloudy earth and yinked to bits. Even the shores now drawn of Hoship Point, poured for their relief, is marred by the jarring djembe of a beloved lane hippie, consummately consumed in the oneness of There's a good possibility that no one will go home, even with the close proximity of the sun to arrive in 3 hours. Some sleeping may occur, and Glyn may play some guitar if he fancies it. Maybe a few trad tunes. Definitively. An L triangle and tangles of beatific hair ribbons to make these mostly ladies, 90s babies reminisce on romantic Ireland, dead and gone. I call and the day seems all but unnecessary, until the night falls. Understanding and misunderstanding become the very basis of many an enduring friendship. The works and idlessness of the many become streamed from the one source. With enough encouragement, all will be levelled this night. The pains of dark party dwellerdom will strike an all too united note when the morning comes. When the morning comes and all the glass has been swept, the shutters rise like an open mouth, ready to inhale over a day's course. Was it reggae last night or jazz? Everybody danced regardless. No old crowds or new crowds here. There are varying degrees of love and enmity, egosity, tomfoolery, enough occurring we consider coining our own adjective, somewhere out past the back of the arms. Far away from shenanigan, nor a mile of devilment. Some would rather listen to a drunken professional musician than some young lad's half alright rendition of Layla. It's open mic season, and with the beer of a Tuesday night, it's got the airs of the extraordinary, and otherwise all too ordinary condition of sucking really bad. I danced really badly, purposefully out of sequence, to some number far slower than my feet, with the relative condition of shame overcome, the ice broke, melted, and all remembered come tomorrow, nothing will be. All was now. I made myself arise and take account, made no promises to achieve a single thing, and it occurred as it was supposed to be. Everything presented itself with no plan of mine to interfere. 'Twould be washed away anyway, reduced in reverse distinction, non-differentiation, destruction by another name. The mirror showed the viewer what it wished, granting it little and much. There were no poverty and richnesses, just those who saw and believed, and those who merely watched without saying a word. Those who were unlearned were considered lucky. Silence is uninterrupted, perhaps a supreme blessing, a different path, albeit to those who necessarily had to wander for some long, unaccountable epoch, becoming disenchanted and dissatisfied, looking for the answers they were convinced to be correct, but not some dull blankness, but a balance of ordered chaotic forces, with no strict place in the world to exist or not to exist. A storm with a calm eye by necessity, a body with an eye and me at its heart, moving and rattling and shaking up everything simply by being near, consumed by torrents, producing torrents, and for a long time unaware of the casual connection, spurred on by its simply